Good morning, everybody. It's Tiffany and Jeff
Howdy-ho.
with Flow in the Coop. And today I want to talk about the blog I wrote last week was Restore Your Cherished Relationships. And this week, well, this morning at 8, I published the cost of not restoring your cherished relationships. So I asked Jeff to come on so that we can share our journey with you in the hopes that it helps some of you that may be in the same situation. Like I said in my blog last week, last year, 2021, I never know what day it is. We went through a really rough patch, and we had 2 issues in our lives that were just gridlock, and we spent all our time fighting about them. And so we finally reached out to our life coach, our couples coach, Jill, and we spent 3 months with her and really restored our relationship. So if you have not read the blog, I will be coming again tomorrow. I'll do my regular Facebook Live and I'll lay out the whole program that I'm starting today. But for today, we're just going to share our experiences. I'm going to try to watch the feed. If you have any questions, pop them in there, and we're happy to answer any of your questions. But today is just to share, exactly what. Oh, and also, we are happy to share our couples coach with you. So if you both are wanting to do coaching and get to the bottom of your gridlock issues, her name is Jill, and just reach out to me and I will connect you with her because she is amazing, right, Jeff?
Oh, yeah.
So I'm going to let Jeff start off just explaining his point of view through all this.
Well, like Tiff said, we had we're having quite a few issues, and then it was kind of getting to a point where we really couldn't come to a workable conclusion for either of us that ended up like, fine, that's just the way it's going to be, when it really couldn't be that way. So Tiff talked about wanting couples coaching, and I was immediately like, absolutely not. I'm not talking to someone that's gonna, hate men or whatever. I don't even know exactly what I was thinking.
Jill's not like that.
No. But it was, it was hard. And we looked around quite a bit, read a lot of bios, and tried to get to a lot of the coaches will have blogs or podcasts or different things like that. So we found Jill and then started meeting with her. But, going into it, I was really kind of afraid of what we would talk about, how it would be, like how discussions would be handled. And am I going to have to do a lot of like homework, or I don't know. But, there was some pre-work, some worksheets and stuff. And, and then you meet Jill. We got to meet Jill for the first time, and she was very nice, very open, really kind of laid out some groundwork. And you could kind of tell right away that she was on both sides, that she really was going to help reach a point, really get to the meat of the problem, and really kind of help you through discussions and different things that are going on in your life that you have to have an answer for. So one thing also was that there were times where we met together. So I was at work a lot, so I would Zoom in from work and Tiff would be home. So I would we would Zoom in, but then I could also, there's one-on-one time. So there are times that I would only meet with Jill, and then times Tiffany would only meet with Jill. which I really liked, because then at that, you meet a couple times together, and then you get an alone time with her, and you really get to like, bleh, just say all the things that you don't want to say to your spouse because you're afraid it's just going to turn into a thing or a big fight or whatever. And then you come back later and meet together, and then you really get to kind of hash it out, and she doesn't let you forget all the things you said. But it's good. There's also a book that we bought, which name I can't. Gottman. Well, that's the name of the guy, but you want to fight about it? No, I'm just kidding. But there's a book also that Tiff could probably share in the notes or something.
Yeah.
That you can get.
Yeah. So for me, I think the biggest thing that we learned going through coaching was the communication part. And, we've been married 32 years and we still didn't know how to communicate. So, man, I wish we had these tools, because that's what it is. It's basically tools that you learn, because I will tell you that just because you go through coaching and you solve whatever gridlock you're in right at that moment, it's not going to be like a one and done thing. These issues are going to surface again at some point. And so we just had to make a decision that was very difficult for both of us. And it triggered some of the old habits, the old arguments and all that. And so we had to stop and use the tools that we learned through coaching, and really learn to listen to each other and hear what they're actually saying and not what we think they're saying. And so for me, that was like the biggest takeaway from but I mean, I don't know about you, Jeff, but I remember before we went to coaching thinking that there's no way she could help us.
Yeah. I mean, I part of Jill's in talking to us before we got started, and I think something that Tiff and I have always had in the back of our head, I think, is that we want it to work out. We really do. And sometimes there were some really close times where I just didn't think it was going to, but in the back of my mind, I really wanted it to. So part of her, not really agreement, but part of her wanting to work with people is you gotta want it to work. And because then you're set from a good place. If you're going into the counseling to unload on your spouse and make her or him the wrong, and and then try and get ammunition and all that kind of stuff, then you need to evaluate what you think you're doing. So it's we worked really hard to get to a place where we can have discussions or arguments about things. We've had one recently. I think one of the things that was great for me and bad for Tiff was Tiffany's always wanted to settle the argument right then. Right. Like right now you have to forgive me, or you have to apologize, or you have to, like, I have to do these things or something, and it has to be settled. And then we have to like hug and go to bed, and one thing Jill talked about was, timeouts, and knowing that it's okay to sleep on it, talk about it, as long as you at that time discuss a time to talk about it again, and it's within 24 hours, which was very nice, because it helped. I mean, an hour of both people chilling out and cooling down and coming back does a tremendous amount to your thoughts and your overall attitude.
What she called it was the pause. You had to learn to take the pause. And so when you feel flooded, is the word she used to use, you take a pause. And yes, I was never one to take a pause. I was going to fight it until it was over. But what I learned by taking a pause is that some of the words that are said, I mean, come on, everybody that's been married longer than 5 years knows how to push their spouse's buttons. And we were good at pushing each other's buttons.
I don't know how to do that.
Whatever. But when I had a chance to step away from it and think about what was said, I realized that I didn't believe, because I think what happens when hurtful things are said, your fear is that it's true. That, I mean, women tend to go to, I'm unlovable, I'm unworthy, I'm too much, I'm not enough. And when I had time to pause, I'm like, well, that's not true. I don't believe that about myself. And so it gave me my power back. Not that I needed it, that sounds weird, but it gave me a confidence that I could go back into a conversation knowing what I believed about myself. And that that made a huge difference for me. What do you think?
I agree.
Okay. So we learned how to communicate. And this week's blog is the cost of not restoring your relationships. And, we're not standing in judgment of anybody that has divorced or is going to decide to divorce, because that is your personal choice. But we're here to encourage you if you want to make it work and you just don't see a way. And if you want to, restore that relationship, and learn the skills that you will use again and again and again, because life is 50-50. You're going to have good times and you're going to have bad times. And as a partner, you're going to have to learn how to deal with them together and be on the same page. And that requires skills that, quite honestly, we're not taught in school. I mean, I don't remember ever being talked to about these kind of issues. You're just expected to work it out. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah. The work it, I don't know. It's funny working things out with your spouse. And, I'm sure everyone goes into an argument feeling that they're 100% right and their spouse is 100% wrong. Or you're 100% justified and they're not. Managing a lot of the people that I realized that people kind of come to circumstances in their lives in a certain way at that particular time in their life. And sometimes they're in a good mindset and sometimes they're not. And I really try and take that into consideration when you're talking, because there's been times where Tiff and I have had a fight or an issue about something that I think is trivial or silly to even worry about. And she just got off the phone with her sister and they were talking about a dog or something, like she's upset about something. And, that's her mind frame and that's her mindset at the time. And people tend to react, can react differently than they normally would. So I, I try and be, that's usually when I sit someone down at work, the first thing I ask is, what's going on in your life right now? And then you find out their dog died or, or whatever, and you're like, oh, okay, look, you get a pass. But I hope people think about that, because that's, I was watching something on Reels or something where people were talking about, all these things that are going through your head, blah, blah, blah. And then it showed something like, no one cares. No one's thinking that. No one's thought that. No one cares about you. No one's thinking about you. Everyone else is thinking about themselves and how they look or what's going on, So, it's a tricky thing trying to talk through conversations and issues and problems, because you have all that going on in your head, and your spouse wouldn't necessarily know that, unless you wanted to burden that person with all that all the time, which I do not. So
Yeah, you never know what's going through somebody's mind. And we're good at assuming what we think they're thinking. And usually it's not even close to what we think they're thinking. So that is another thing that we learned through coaching is, we can't control what the other person is thinking. So we can only control what we're thinking and what we're making those words that they're saying mean. And that was the biggest takeaway for me, is that, I got really good at knowing what I believed about myself. So this week I'm launching a program called Restore Your Cherished Relationships in 90 Days. Tomorrow I will come back on Facebook Live and share all the details about it. But I'm so glad that Jeff agreed to do this, because I really do have a heart to help other people. And I know that you're out there because I've talked to you. I've talked to so many friends, and we're really good at making our Instagram look perfect. That we're real cute, we're real fun, we're no problems. But if you're a couple for any length of time, you're going to have problems. And there's no shame or guilt in that. And so I was hoping that by Jeff coming on and being honest about what he experienced, that it would take away a little bit of that fear of that you're the only one that's going through this, or that there's supposed to be some kind of shame that if you're having problems, because everybody else is having problems too, they just don't want to talk about it. So, and why would we? Why would we want to open ourselves up to that? So I hope that this reaches some of you that might be interested in this program. You can read about it today on the blog. If you're on my email list, then you've got it in your email inbox. The website is www.2flownthecoop.com. And I'm just really hoping that we can help some other people that were in our shoes restore their relationships.
Yeah.
Any last words?
No. Thanks,
right.
everyone. This has been fun.
Yeah, I don't see the comments. So if you made a comment, I will go back and answer any of your questions. But if you have questions and you're watching this on replay, pop them in the comments. I'll keep an eye on it today. And Jeff and I will do our best to answer them as best we can. All right. Have a great day. Happy Martin Luther King's Day.